Good afternoon, folks. So it's 17th of July, Sunday. Just going to do a bit of a breakdown as to what I want to see, or what I would like to see for the upcoming week, just based on pound yen. So a bit of a weekly outlook, a bit of a breakdown, and just going to start from the monthly, break it down to the 4 hour, and maybe just have a look at the 1 hour. Now, just looking at basically last week. Well, the week before last, we formed a support, but that candle was basically sort of like a nothing candle. Um, we sort of opened where we basically closed the previous week, and we closed there. So yes, it is a bit of a nothing candle in terms of we haven't really went anywhere since the close of the previous week. However, it did form a support. Okay, so it was a support. So that's what I mentioned on my last week. It was a support, and if we can respect the low of this and confirm the support by closing a second bullish candle, weekly candle, that means we then have a higher support than here. Essentially you could say that this is the higher support because we formed the support here, pushed up, formed the resistance, and then closed above the resistance with another bullish candle confirming a higher support. And I would agree. However, when we did break down, we failed to break down and we then put in a support. So how I would be kind of looking at that now is I would be disregarding this and I would just be looking at this as just a deeper retracement, to do something like that potentially. So last week formed or confirmed the support on the weekly for me. And again, we didn't really go anywhere in terms of, it wasn't like a big weekly candle like what we have seen here. It was sort of just more rangy, and when it will be a bit more evident, on the hourly time frame. But just to kind of look at what last week done, well, just in simple terms, last week confirmed the support by forming a second bullish candle. Yes, we are trading within the previous candle, but we respected the low and we closed above the previous in terms of where that closed. So for me, that's a good sign that we may see potential upside. Because I would be saying to myself, well, why aren't we down here? If we were going to be going that way. But of course, we are moving bullish in the market overall on the higher time frames. So if I just go back to the monthly, if I'm looking at the monthly candle, what I'm liking just from looking at the monthly is we're respecting the supports, and we can see here that resistance, support, when this candle here closed outside of this range, forming a higher support, what I wouldn't want to see is a close below the support, okay, or even a close below the resistance, because we would then be trading within this range. But what I like is the fact that we're showing rejection. Okay, so we've respected the low of the previous month. Now don't get me wrong, they were only halfway into this month. However, if we have already pushed down so much and we're rejecting, there's a good chance that because we're moving up in the market, we might then start to see some form of upside, and this monthly candle could potentially flip bullish and we could look to potentially go this way. Because I'm sort of looking at this, well, because we're sort of bullish on a lot of time frames, in terms of like weekly, daily, 4 hour structure, it's all sort of bullish. I don't really see price coming back down. I'm sort of seeing this, well, we've already come down, it's now time to go up. So that's what I'm looking at. What I also like as well is, let me just bring on my sort of rectangle, is we're obviously above this support, we're above this resistance, we're also above this resistance, which aligns sort of where the support is. We are sort of above the zone, or just buying on the zone. So we're sort of clearing, we're gradually moving up in the market, and we are gradually respecting areas and closing above areas and sort of leaving this sort of range. Yes, we're not out of the woods yet. We still are trading just above this sort of resistance zone from here. But what I'm looking at based on this is this direction. I want to see price going to the upside. And I think we may be able to see that this coming week and potentially to close the month out. So what I'm sort of looking at in the monthly, well, where is targets? If we were to sort of flip bullish and go this way, where would I be looking at? Well, you could say fill the previous monthly's wick, which is a possibility. However, if I look left and I look at structure, this is the next support that we would come into. Now, prices already tapped into that and reacted, tapped into that and reacted. So this is going to be the first point of contact before we even get to potentially filling the wick. So to me, that's going to be targets for the sort of longer term. Of course, if we can then break and close above this, that would be a good sign to see, well, if we close above, could we potentially pull back and respect this to continue? Or if we pull deeper and we start to get closes back above, can we then buy that up? And of course, you would be looking left. Well, this is most recent here. We'd be looking at saying, well, what is this on the lower time frames? So that's what would be looking at from a monthly. And if I go to the weekly, again, support, higher support, we're looking for continuation. But of course, where this closed, we did reject this support, which is here. So ultimately, what if I was just say trading this time frame? If just say I was looking at this as like a 30-minute time frame, for example, I wouldn't really want to be buying this candle because we are below the support. And what I would be looking at is something along the lines of this. If we can close above and then respect this and then look to do something like that. But again, your resistance is here. So it's not really, if this was a trading time frame for me, for example, it wouldn't be a position I would want to be getting involved in just because looking left, we're already reacting at supports. The resistance is just above, that comes first prior to the sort of zone where the wicks would be. You don't really want to push that. And we have sort of struggled when we have got to this area up here, in and around here, just across the board from this sort of time frame. But, I'm sort of looking at the monthly's already done its downside. The weekly's confirmed the support. It makes more sense to go up, right? Of course, when we go up, there is no say that we're just going to go straight here. We may run into, issues getting past here. We may run into issues here at the resistance, sort of reaction areas. So you can't just say it's going to be easy pickings to go to the upside. But because we are in where we are, we would expect to see some form of downside, which may create the wick of the previous or of the wick of the new weekly candle. But of course, I would be looking for structure to potentially hold. But essentially, if you're just going on based on candles, you would want the low of the previous week to be respected, which is here. But of course, we are going to have structure within here, which I would prefer us to respect, and for that structure to remain intact to see further upside. So not really much to see on the daily other than we've formed the support or confirmed the support, I should say. But we are in a bit of a rangy area as we drop down the time frames. So if I go to the daily, I do really like this. Now, of course, I've got like a lot of zones and stuff on here, which I may refer to at the end, but just to keep it as clean and as concise as possible, and just from a visual perspective, it's easier to just analyze this with naked charts, right? Not get confused of all the lines and zones I have on. But It's just to have a fresh perspective going into the week. And it's all about really like what makes more sense, you know? And for me, based on the daily time frame, what makes more sense? Well, it makes more sense to see bullish price action. And if we look at this as our most recent support and resistance on the daily, what has price done? Well, we have broken and closed outside of the zone, and then what we have done is we have pulled back and retested that, and we have closed above the previous daily candle. So you could technically say, because we have pushed out, already pulled back, and we're going this way, you could just potentially like buy that. Do you know what I mean? Not to say that we're going to go straight up, but from a what makes more sense? Well, we've formed a support. We formed a higher support. We've then broken out of this range, which is also above this resistance. So it makes more sense to go this way. You know, where's the next potential area based on this time frame? Well, looking left at what's most recent, we have this support, and then we also have this resistance. So, you know, you could say, well, do you know what? I'm going to take a buy here and try and test the most recent resistance and pay attention to these areas. Now, of course, within here, across the board, there is going to be lower time frame areas of interest and reaction areas, and especially because we are, let me just draw that again. We are at this resistance or this support zone, which has been, of course, impactful across the board when we look at what happens when we come into this zone. You know, we get reaction, rejection, 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 and rejection again. So we're not out of the woods yet to say that because we have closed outside of most recent, that we are just going to continue bullish. However, for me, it makes more sense to do that. You know, essentially what you could say as well is, well, what you would like is a close outside of this zone. Look for this zone to be held as support, or a support outside of the zone, and then look to continue target to target, play continuation to your higher time frame levels and higher time frame zones. So that's what I would be looking at on the daily. But you know, I do quite like what this candle's done, in a sense that it's pulled back and retested the resistance as support and then continued, and we are above this resistance level as well. So if I just drop to the 4 hour, this is where we are, and it is a bit messy in a sense that, well, we're forming a support kind of like how we've done um on the what the time frame was at, sorry, I think it might have been the weekly. Confirm support, but look where we're sort of buying into. Looking at the 4 hour, yes, we've confirmed support, but you're sort of buying into resistance, which you've already rejected with the previous 4 hour and stuff. So it's not really a clean area to buy into. However, what I'm sort of looking at here is we're moving up in the market. We're forming higher supports. I would be expecting this zone to be respected because this is the previous daily low, and this is obviously the 4 hour structure. So I would be looking for this to be respected. But of course, because it is going to be a fresh week, we could see some downside. So we could close below this support, but that doesn't necessarily mean sales, because if we look at the daily, we would still be above the previous daily low. So as soon as that gets breached, you could potentially look for closes below, look for retests of that to continue down, because not only would you be below this, let me just pull that off a second. Because if we're looking at this as structure, first point of contact is we want this to be respected, which was on Friday. However, with the new week opening, we could see some form of downside. I would be looking for the same thing to happen on Friday to happen again this week to see this. But if we do pull into here, it could just be a deeper retracement to do this. So if we're looking at this on a daily time frame, if we pull deeper, candles leaving this zone would give you an opportunity to buy to test the target, which is going to be a resistance, you know, because we would have been moving down to get down to this area in the first place. So that would I would be looking at, as well as if we close down here, sorry, within here, and we push back up and we start to form some form of resistance and we're struggling, then you could look to sell that and target the target, look to push down to that zone. But of course, my preferred, you know, options would be to buy. And if we just look at this on the 4 hour again, I don't really want to be selling below here to try and target this when we have this rejection already from this level. So in order for me to potentially sell, if we close below here, we're going to be breaching the previous daily low. If we have any pullbacks and we start to form support, lower resistance, and we start to fail to break above, you could potentially to sell that to target that target. But again, does that make sense? Because depending on where we close below, the next support is basically right here. So if we pull back, we could come to this support, push higher because we're bullish. We could come to this support, push higher because we're bullish. We could come to this support, push higher because we're bullish. So all these areas are going to be tough because you're basically selling into supports. You know, the perfect example was this candle here. You know, at one point in time, this candle was heavily bullish, or bearish, I should say. So if you look at this as a support, push up, resistance, push down, this candle forms a higher support. You are, obviously in the lower time frames, you're going to be below this support here. So you might be thinking, oh, lower resistance, I'll sell, and then look to continue. And you've just hit the first support and we've had a big rejection from there. So what's to say that you don't get something like that when you actually breach this support? You could just get a strong rejection like this from here, here, or here. So all these areas where price could potentially pull back to form the weekly low could be areas to buy from. So primarily, I'm going to be looking for buying opportunities. I don't really like the idea of selling just because of what we're doing and where we would be putting back to. So there might be opportunities to sell in the sessions and stuff, but it's really just going to depend for me what's left and where could we target. Because if we look at this on the 1 hour chart, this is garbage. This is garbage. You know, do you really want to be selling to here, selling to here? Like what this reminds me of is what we had up here when we were, I think there was maybe like a couple of weeks ago, there was a couple of decent selling opportunities on maybe Monday or Tuesday. And then the rest, I just sat out the rest of the week because it was just garbage. And if you're looking at, you know, if you just zoom out, you know, you want to be capturing the better moves, the cleaner moves, you know, this sort of price action. You don't want to be trying to buy and sell in all this wiki rejection, and that's just sort of giving me the same sort of vibes with what we're doing on the lower time frames on here. So, you know, if I was just looking at this, well, this is my most recent resistance. I would like a close above that, higher support above this to target the target. You know, do we potentially get close above, pull back, form a support, target to target? You know, essentially looking at the 4 hour, I don't really like what we're doing. So what I would want to see is price to give me or confirm to me direction. I would like to see price break out of this zone. Let me just actually put on the annotation here. You know, I would ideally like to see a close outside of here. So then we can say, right, we're definitely going up. And then as we pull back form a higher support, look to buy that, or if we pull back the previous structure, look for price to leave this and then, you know, buy that up. Essentially as well, if we pull back to a previous level of structure within here and we start to change structure to the upside in line with the bias, I would be looking to buy that with the higher sort of time frame in mind. But again, I'm sort of primarily looking for buys this week, this upcoming week, based on structure and based on what we're doing. And yeah, that's sort of my sort of outlook. If we break below support, for me, that's not an indication to sell. It could just be a deeper retracement to push higher, kind of like how this candle's done that. If we can open the week and push high, create a target, break above recent structures, pull back, form solid supports, target to target. You know, based on where we are, I don't want to be trading within this. You know, looking at this on the 30-minute time frame, is that really attractive to be trading? Not really. You know, I'd want to see some nice pushes out above and form new structure outside of this shitty range. But if we do pull down first and foremost to start the week, and we break below these supports, I would be sort of looking at the previous daily low and the previous structure lows to see, well, do we pull down here, and then do we start to leave these zones and start to change structure, and then we could look to buy this back up. And you could look to target where you want, but essentially I would be looking for price to come out of this. If we're going to push higher and break above and continue, we're going to be breaking out of this zone, this sort of bigger range. But essentially, buying from the bottom of the range would be the best play. So if we do start to come down, I'm just going to be waiting to see if we form a support to continue. Yeah, so that's my sort of breakdown of my thoughts. Well, what happens if we close below here? Well, if we close below here, form a lower resistance, then you have an option to target the target. But again, it's going to be a bit more riskier in terms of what you're selling into based on the 4-hour and all these supports. But yeah, primarily looking for buys really based on this week, upcoming week, hoping that because we are leaving this resistance, the support, leaving these areas, that we could maybe get some bullish price action, flip this bullish and push up to maybe end the month up around 167 or 166, somewhere in around there. And then essentially I would be looking for price to close above 168, close within this zone. This is going to be my new zone. If we can close in here, I'd be looking for this to be respected and continue this way. Or if we come back down to previous structure, wherever it may be, candles leaving, back in, be looking at this here. So that's my sort of outlook, my ideas. Yeah, so I'll get this uploaded. But yeah, anyone that watches, 23-minute video, 24, appreciate you taking the time to watch it. But thank you.